Good morning and welcome to UPN Focus. I'm your host, Milt Thompson, and this is called the Amateur and Professional Sports Capital of the World here in Indianapolis. And just back in 1998, we added to the inventory of super new organizations that we consider professional sports teams. We have added the Indiana Invaders, and we're going to talk about that organization with our very, very special guest, Greg Harger, who is the Executive Director of the Indiana Invaders, and with one of their top star, upcoming superstar athletes, Collette Liss, who runs the 3,000 meters, the 5,000 meters, and a lot more. Greg, tell me a little bit about Indiana Invaders, back in 1998, kind of the brainchild of you and some others, and before you know it, we've got professional track and field here in our city.
Yes, actually, in 98, the paperwork was completed. The idea, our head coach, Chris Bueller, and myself, years ago on the roads, out running, staying in shape, that type of thing, and while we were at Ball State University in Muncie, talked about trying to find solutions from our own perspective and our own experience for people after they graduate from college. There was really no place to go as a track and field athlete in an organized fashion or structure, and we've come to the point now where we've brought something together and put down some roots and started to build a foundation for bringing athletes to Indianapolis and helping get those people on Olympic teams and world championship teams.
So exactly what do you do? I mean, what is there a team concept? Although track and field is largely an individual sport, how can the Indiana Invaders create its own image and develop a trend towards track and field being a much more popular sport?
Right. One of the real strong feelings we had was if we bring some resources that this community has a great spirit and history with the amateur sport, Olympic sport types of activities. The facilities in Indianapolis are legendary. Our thought process was, why not invite people to come here and make this their home and live here and train on a daily basis while they progress through their careers. And why not bring men, women, distance runners, sprinters, throwers, jumpers, all of these people that make up track and field, bring them into one place and create a team just like we have in college and high school. Let's bring together a team for the post-collegiate athlete in track and field. And the history of the sport's one of very much individuals, and we thought it would be exciting for this community, and this would really be a perfect place to bring a different look to track and field and a different identity by creating a club with all the events in one place.
Well, how many people are on the team, and how do you recruit them, and where do you go to find the athletes that move and live here and train here?
The collegiate system really generates a lot of track and field talent. Our recruiting process is basically making athletes as they graduate from college aware of the fact that we've started a club and there's something new here, and explaining the resources in the community and the support that's here and the facilities. And we've brought some coaches in together to provide some support for the day-to-day training that we have here. So contacting those athletes, we've been stronger geographically within our region, the Midwest, although we have athletes, our total is about 40. We have an athlete here from California, a female hurdler. We have a young man from Florida here, so we have drawn interest from these athletes after college from really coast to coast in the year and a half that we've actually had athletes coming here after the initial time we spent just getting organized and setting up our operations.
And it's clear your objective, just like any other professional team, would be to recruit the best, the creme de la creme, so that ultimately you will be able to be the sponsor or the team from which world champions and Olympic champions are grown. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That's the exciting part of it, is to be able to provide some unique resources and opportunities for people. And our goal is nothing short of being the best track and field club in the United States. We'll cap ourselves out in terms of numbers at 100 athletes, and expect to accomplish that in the next year and a half to reach those numbers. And from that point forward, then we'll start, we've already started keeping score in terms of numbers of people qualified for the Olympic trials, world championships, and getting some people involved on world championship teams. We've been very fortunate to have 3 athletes in the past year make a world championship team and compete internationally and represent the United States in that fashion. So that's been a little bit farther ahead of what we might have anticipated originally in our first year.
Well, unless your head has been completely under the sand, people have already heard of the name Collette Liss. Collette, superstar emerging, probably aspirations of an Olympic gold medal and world championships down the road. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to running, and then ultimately your recruitment process to get to the professional team, the Invaders.
Okay. Well, I think back to my first running experience was probably when I was about 8 years old. My dad would take my brother and I out on walks, and he would just kind of sporadically tell us, you know, let's race to that stop sign or to that yellow house, and we would take off. And my brother and I were both very competitive with one another, so this is one area where I could beat him. And so I just knew that I enjoyed it then. I ran in junior high and high school. My senior year of high school, I won the state championship in the mile and 2 mile. Briefly ran at Ball State University and then continued my collegiate career at Valparaiso University. Was recruited by the Invaders and joined with them this past July.
So in that recruitment process, you get a phone call from Harger and he says, we're looking for the absolute best milers, 3,000 meter runners that we could possibly find. You're the one we've got targeted. You're from the state of Indiana. You went to school at Ball State, Valparaiso, and come and join our team.
Something like that. I spoke with them at a few of the different meets. They would be present at the NCAA competitions. I spoke with them there. They sent me a packet in the mail. Yeah.
And they offered all kinds of advantages if you were to join the team rather than you just going about your training regimen professionally by yourself?
Well, I think what interested me in joining the Invaders was the continued support system. I knew that in order to succeed at the levels where I want to go, it's definitely more beneficial to have a structure set up to just produce the success that I want.
And you're coached by them. You have housing established if necessary, and there are also medical services available and educational opportunities available. And these are the kind of things that maybe set apart the Invaders from having them do it on your own.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from equipment to coaching to the administrative aspect, that's all taken care of, which just allows me to focus on my job as an athlete.
And Greg, you know, this whole team concept is still taking some time to kind of germinate in people's minds. We've heard of clubs in track and field, like the Santa Monica Track Club and others that may not be residential clubs. But what we want to do, obviously, is kind of differentiate between those kind of programs versus the one that you've got established. And what are we going to do in terms of competition? Competitions, is it a team against a team, or is it individuals against individuals, or how does all that go? And where do we get started with that?
Well, in the United States, there really aren't any clubs like this right now, so it'd be tough for us to imagine going against another team. Really, on paper, there aren't other teams to go up against, type of thing. But we're most excited about we're in a community with as fine a track as any other track in North America. And a great history in the stadium on the campus at IUPUI, the Indiana University's track and soccer stadium there. They got a great history. We've got some talented athletes, and we're bringing more here. Logical next step for us is let's host some events here in this community and let people come and see what we're doing and who these people are that are now moving here and living here and working here and training and engaged in those activities. So we're excited about the next phase for us, really, to bring events into part of what we do and what we're involved with in the community.
We're going to talk about those events, and we're going to talk a little bit more about your aspirations for the future right after these short words. And welcome back to UPN Focus. And we're back with our special guest, Greg Harger of the Indiana Invaders, and Collette Liss, world-class athlete. We were talking about some of the events that the Invaders are planning in terms of invitational as well as a host, but there are several events also that your athletes go and participate in regularly. Tell us about the events that you're trying to plan, Greg, and then I want to talk to Collette about the events that she's participated in recently.
Well, this year we're looking forward to initiating 3 events, and they will be annual events for us. Next year we'll add a 4th, and at least as far as we can see into the future right now, we don't anticipate doing any more than that. 1 in late April, 1 in May, 1 in June, and 1 in July. And elite level track and field in the United States is basically a May into June type of thing. This year with the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games in the Southern Hemisphere, the calendar shifted a little bit later. So we'll have May 20th, we'll have our first event. June 24th will be our second one, and then on July 1st will be our 3rd event. And we're excited from the standpoint of these will be get ourselves established, get familiar with our officials, and we're creating our own meet operations, personnel. Everything we're new, everything we're doing is new, so it'll be a shaking out type of process, and yet at the same time the facility is so exceptional, and the athletes know that they're going to have good performances there. We haven't put our information out and aggressively recruited the other people to come in yet, and we're receiving some phone calls and interest, and we've heard the rumor, and we're a week away from putting that out into our track and field world, and then a couple weeks away from letting people know in the community that we'll be hosting these events and start to promote them in the community.
And you and your colleagues have created a fairly unique format for track and field meets. Why don't you briefly tell us about that?
Yes, we're taking a little bit different approach to the way we'll conduct and present our track meet, and our approach is one towards putting a spotlight on one event at a time within the stadium. And even within that setting, taking advantage and borrowing some ideas from some other sports. The Tour de France yellow jersey is always an easy way for people to see who's in the lead, and we'll do our events. Each event, the best athlete will be wearing number 1. Maybe a little extra pressure, put a target on them or a bullseye, but it'll make it easier for people to follow what's going on within the event. And there will be the sequence of events, or the order of events, will be based on the on-paper resume and talent of the athletes, so that the athlete's ability has an impact on the order of events. The best athlete's event will be the last event of the evening, and so we'll allow the athletes and their talent to dictate who the star is, as opposed to somebody predetermining maybe it's a 100-meter runner or a miler. Trying to bring a little fairness to our sport.
Sounds like a faster, quicker pace, maybe susceptible more to television than track and field meets have in the past. You never know, you might have to negotiate right here with Paramount to have them carry some of those meets. Collette, ultimately, World Championship is where you want to be, get that Olympic gold medal around your neck, and then all the commercialism that befriends someone who is at the top of their game. But there really aren't any overnight successes. What's going on? What's your training regimen? What is your game plan in order to actually achieve those lofty goals?
Well, in the past 8 months, I obviously have a new workout schedule with a new coach, which has been working very effectively. So I think the success that I have had so far is just a very small step in the direction that I want to go. What the head coach, Chris Beeler, and I have laid out is a 12-year plan, and the underlying goal that I want to achieve is to be a dominant force on the world level from every event, from the mile to the 10,000, including cross-country competitions. And
you're already kind of just a few seconds away between world-class caliber. Some of the competitions you've participated in, NCAA is obviously back in the college days, but now championships, U.S. championships, and you travel the European circuit, and you're getting involved in track and field at the highest levels. What do you see as your greatest impediment to reaching your goal? More competition? Other athletes? Your own work habits and willpower?
I don't really see any.
There are no impediments.
There are no barriers.
Well, I have a feeling the coaches really kind of simply just added on to this type of attitude, and that's the type of attitude I believe that a team concept from a support proposition brings to the table. We're talking about this competition and it's ongoing, and that you're developing athletes and you're trying to create more opportunities for other athletes. What do you see as the magic of this team concept in being able to develop world champions, Greg?
Well, one of the real keys is our format of 2 people per event. To be successful in an individual sport at the highest level, you've got to have a pretty brutal, single-minded, selfish type of approach to your training and your territory, and a sense of wanting to be at the top. And our format is not to bring in a large group of people in the same event area where they would undermine one another and that type of thing. Human nature with a competitive athlete. So our format of having 2 people per event allows us to have people who can share workouts, but they're not threatened as they focus on long-term development. As Collette mentioned, I have a 12-year plan. The model in this country has been training groups, all a group of distance runners in one area, and we're not following that model, and we think that it'll be a lot more productive for people to come in and train without being threatened by their own teammates, and yet having a lot of teammates, but you're not threatened by people who are throwing the shot put or sprinting or hurdling or doing those types of things. So that part's a radical departure from what's been the status quo in our sport with development. And the other part of it is to approach an A-plus mentality with what we're doing, not just with the athletes, but being aggressive in trying to solve problems and be creative with our solutions, and hopefully the athletes and our effort and energy is at the same level, whether it's administrative or coaching or the work that the athletes are doing.
Well, people in this town here are fairly familiar with USA Track and Field, which is the governing body for the United States track and field running and field events. What kind of relationship do you have with them? Is this one where they're kind of stepping back and watching, or are they interested in what you're trying to accomplish and whether or not you can replicate this kind of team process someplace else, or would they rather you not be around?
That's other than one of the great things that's happened. There's a new CEO, and there's been some fresh blood and fresh energy into what's happening in the national office and what's happening in our sport. But it's easier for us to make changes in what's happening for athletes on a personal level by being independent, and that's been our focus, and we're almost in our own little shell with that type of thing. But Craig Masbach, who's the new CEO, has been very supportive of what we're doing and very encouraging of what we're doing. But I'm sure that the establishment of our sport, in terms of our looking at radically doing different things with events and creating a club that's not on the same format, has been something that people have raised the eyebrow and sat back and kind of watched to see whether we'll be successful or not, or whether we can grow, or whether we can get results. And that's human nature. That comes with the territory. But it's in a short period of time, it's been encouraging and a sign to us that we're headed in the right direction, that people now are starting to come in and be complimentary of what's going on. But anytime you do something radically different, people want to step back and watch, and sounds like a great idea. Well, let's wait and see whether that works or not.
Well, there's been some controversy, as we know, on the track and field level with respect to artificial stimulants and drugs and what have you. How are we going to be able to deal with that on a local community basis, education for our children? We're going to explore those topics when we come right back after these words. And welcome back to UPN Focus. We've been discussing the world of professional track and field with Greg Harger, who's Executive Director of the Indiana Invaders, and with Collette Liss, world-class athlete. We talked about having problems with image with track and field athletes, with drugs, steroids, image issues, discussions about all that, gender testing, all that sort of stuff. Collette, do you find it as a world-class athlete an obligation, first of all, to help dispel that image, and how do you do it? And then what are you going to do with the local community to help educate children that things aren't quite as bad in the sport as perhaps others see it?
Well, I think as a role model, there's definitely a responsibility towards the community and children to show them that, you know, there are people out there at the top level who are not doing drugs and who don't need drugs. I think through community involvement, getting out there, talking with the kids, and just kind of showing them that you don't need that type of stuff to excel.
And Greg, as the organization, the Indiana Invaders itself, how are you going to integrate yourselves into this community so that you are literally a household word, and that our athletes also are the type of images that we want to project as role models?
Yes, as our athletes come in right now, we start right away with, we recognize as an organization that that it's a big issue for our sport and has been for a long time. When you pursue the ultimate performance with speed or strength or endurance, and there's always been those temptations, and we've had many notorious situations in our sport. Right from the very beginning, we spent time getting the information from our governing bodies and trying to understand the system so that we can educate our athletes as they come right out of the college ranks, things that they should be aware of, what to do, even the innocent types of things of being at grandma's and having an herbal tea and testing positive is a thing that kind of makes a few of them a little paranoid, worrying about that kind of thing. But being aware of all that, and then understanding the process and understanding why our sport's been as aggressive as it has been, which is really a tribute to the sincerity of what's going on behind the scenes of trying to test and screen and eliminate those things. But it gives you an opportunity to also educate. And as Collette alluded to, we have an opportunity as we grow and go into the next stage for ourselves to start some formalized relationships with youth organizations and having our athletes be able to speak and carry a message. One of those messages that we can carry whenever we spend time in places is to address the drug type of thing in human performance right up front as something that everybody's heard about it, everybody knows about it. Let's not avoid it. Let's take it right up front and talk about it and ask kids questions.
The information that you get onto your athletes and the athletes that you have onto the greater community. Well, we've got all kinds of events going on around our town. We're going to find out about them with our calendar.
Thanks, Milt. Here are some more events in our area for you to focus on. The Indiana Broadcasters Association would like to remind you to completely and accurately fill out and mail your census survey. There are millions of dollars of federal funding at stake for schools, healthcare, social services, and libraries, just to name a few. Without your census survey, Indiana could be in jeopardy of losing our 10th congressional seat. So fill out your census survey and mail it today. Did you know that every 3 seconds someone needs blood? The Central Indiana Regional Blood Center needs 500 volunteer blood donations every day to meet the needs of Indiana hospitals. Call 317-916-5150 for hours and locations. If you'd like to let our viewers know about your event, let us know at least 3 weeks in advance. Send your event details to Community Calendar, care of UPN 23, 4551 West 16th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana 46222. Now back to you, Milt.
Please take part in these activities that are around our town, and also take part as you keep your ears on the Indiana Invaders, have been represented today by Greg Harger and by Collette Liss. We really appreciate all of your cards, letters, emails. Keep them coming. Let us know the type of show you want to hear right here on UPN Focus. Hey, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.